3, 2, 1. Ow. I'm so used to wearing gloves when I do that whenever I do so. Why did I do it twice?
Your hands are too strong, too powerful.
Too mighty. Oh, but that's fucking...
There's muscles under there.
I'm fucking...
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
It's good. We'll keep that. Hello all and welcome to the Jimquisition. I'm James Stephanie Sterling, bastard, and I'm joined here with Laura Kate Dale.
I'm here. I finally met you, a human being.
Finally, we've met each other in real life. Podquisition co-host and Jimquisition subtitler Laura Kate Dale, and also host of a show called Accessibility, which is good because, well, it's a really good show first and foremost. And also today we're going to be talking about accessibility. Isn't that right?
That's a really important thing to talk about.
Yes. It is a very important thing to talk about, and it's become more of a conversation in the game industry lately. Your show, Accessibility, talks about all the various ways in which this topic has grown. And today we're going to talk about all the ways in which the game industry is looking to get brownie points for doing it, for encouraging it, and really undermining their own message by how they are exploiting those with accessibility issues. Microtransactions. We're talking about microtransactions today, not capitalism.
Definitely not capitalism.
Capitalism's bad.
Accessibility has indeed become a hot topic over the past few years as more and more companies look to lower the barrier to entry for players with disabilities. Some of the most simple options have been around forever, albeit inconsistently applied. Subtitles are of course useful for deaf and hard of hearing players, while colourblindness modes have been an increasingly common feature in games. In recent years, developers have stepped up their game and offered new and improved ways for users with disabilities to get into their products. Indie title Celeste is often praised, rightfully so, for its ability to tweak multiple aspects of gameplay through an assist mode that reduces the pressure of its tight platforming action by giving increased reaction time. Similarly, the delightful Iconfell allows players to reduce the requirements for timing-based prompts during battles, or even skip battles entirely. In the so-called AAA gaming space, companies have taken notice and, with no small amount of self-congratulatory fanfare, added increased avenues for assisted play. The Last of Us stands as one of the most impressive examples, with massive tweaks available to visuals, sound and gameplay. The game has settings that allow it to be played by entirely sightless players, a mode that highlights enemies and items in stark high contrast colours, puzzles can be skipped, aiming can be made easier, and options have been split into visual, hearing and motor presets that allow players with a vast number of disabilities to have a laugh killing zombies in the fun zombie game that's just a fun game about being violent with zombies. The message of the game is that violence is good. However, until the game industry addresses the elephant in the room, or proves capable of shame enough to even see it as an elephant, the preening over how it's opening games up for everybody will ring more than a little hollow. After all, an industry that gleefully preys upon those with accessibility issues on one hand can't extend the other to be shaken for addressing accessibility issues. I am of course talking about one of my favourite things to despise and resent, microtransactions. In-game monetization continues to be the ruin of far too many video games. Whole games have had their designs vandalised to accommodate shitty in-game economies that suck the fun out of the experience, with grinding progress, constant badgering for purchases, withholding the best items and upgrades, excessive time wasting, and outright gambling mechanics. Things that were once unlockable in-game are now squirreled away behind loot boxes, games are drowned in multiple currencies, and upgrade systems that have become bloated, and things like cosmetics are now considered the near-exclusive domain of post-purchase purchases. And, worst of all, they are designed to prey upon selected targets, the most vulnerable being players with disabilities that may find themselves susceptible to the intense and calculating psychological manipulation inherent to premium video game economies. Most recently, Apex Legends made headlines for opening up the game's accessibility options to a wider industry. The game has garnered praise since launch for its suite of options, most notably the ping system that lets players communicate vital information simply and clearly without the need to talk to others over voice chat. This ping system is most definitely among Apex's best features and is perfect for those with speech difficulties, hearing disabilities, as well as those who, like myself, are just terminally antisocial. Apex Legends has officially gotten its pinger out for public exposure as part of Electronic Arts' Patent Pledge, an initiative that gives non-EA companies free access to certain accessibility features found in its games. As a result, any game by any studio can utilise Apex Legends' ping system, which is not just great for accessibility, but great for anybody who thinks the patenting of game mechanics can simply fuck off and die. Options for EA's long-running FIFA series are also part of the pledge, allowing potential competitors access to the game's colour and contrast adjustments. Both Apex Legends and FIFA are also designed to financially exploit those with disabilities in disgusting ways, with FIFA especially proving one of the most predatory and outright harmful games in the entire video game industry. Microtransactions are an accessibility issue, simple as that. Designed to target the vulnerable, neurodivergent people are especially at risk of the manipulative pull of video game economies. They create anxiety with time limits. They foster impulsiveness with their constant dangling and promises of time saving. They confuse with multiple currencies and bloviated progression systems. Fact is that EAs, the Activisions, the Ubisofts, even the Sonys and Microsofts continue to enact or condone these addictive, deceitful, swindling practices, expecting congratulations for consideration of disability while actively hurting disabled people. One of my most well-regarded videos, The Addictive Cost of Predatory Video Game Monetization, gathered first-hand testimony of those with gambling problems and those who struggle with impulsive purchasing. For a gambling addict, loot boxes are outright poisonous. Still largely unregulated across the world, they provide the same dopamine hit, the same rush of gambling, complete with real money risk, but offer no age limitations, no barriers to entry, all wrapped up in the harmless guise of an over-the-counter video game product. One of the worst stories was that of a gambling addict who turned to video games to help with his recovery and found that playing Call of Duty was invaluable for taking his mind off the constant allure of betting. That is, until loot boxes came for the series and effectively froze him out due to how similar they were to the very thing he was trying to use escapism to escape. In the latter half of the 2010s, loot boxes exploded into the mainstream gaming space with merciless abandon and aggressively pursued those who needed literally anything other than gambling in their lives. Gambling addiction is but one avenue of exploitation for these economies. I've been fairly open about my struggles with ADHD, something that went undiagnosed until last year, which quite honestly explains a fucking lot about my life until recently. I have particularly severe ADHD, which impairs my impulse control, my memory, my threshold for patience, and a ton of other stuff. It's an oversimplified misconception that ADHD is just having trouble concentrating, though that's obviously a big part of it. It turns out that being attention deficit has a knock-on effect for all manner of impairments, and the long time without treatment has most definitely had a deteriorating impact on my ability to brain good. All this is to say that in a moment that shames me, I once idly spent money on pocket fucking Mortys without really thinking about what I was doing. My impulsiveness and my lack of patience for the grinding and randomization made me toss some money to get more of the dribblingly and unsatisfyingly unlockable playable Mortys, and I didn't even think about how I was buying loot boxes until immediately afterwards, where my brain actually caught up and said, wait a minute. My lack of self-control as a result of simply not thinking is genuinely scary to me. I can't just watch a television show. I've been unable to simply view a show or movie for a long time now, as it'll be less than 5 minutes before I'm mindlessly scrolling on my phone, or I've picked up my handbag full of legally downloaded games that are totally illegal to download. Whatever I was trying to focus on, whatever I was trying to hold my concentration for, just goes out the window until God knows how much time has passed, and I realise that God knows how much time has passed. We're still trying to find medication that helps me clear my mind and gain better control. In fact, I should be trying some new stuff today, but until that happens, my relationship with media is unpredictable at best. And bear in mind, this is me we're talking about here. Someone who loathes loot boxes to the core, quite easily the most vocal opponent of gambling mechanics in the entirety of the game's media business, and thanks to my fucking brain, I had a failure of impulse control that put money into the coffers of cocks. If I was not so staunchly opposed to them, I guarantee I'd be worse at this as well. It wouldn't be a momentary slip that causes me to feel fucking wretched in the immediate aftermath. It would be worse. I feel the pull all the time. Whenever I play a game with microtransactions, the constant tugging on my sleeve for more money is pretty powerful. It's easy enough for those without neurodivergencies to simply say, have some self-control, but when your brain is explicitly wired to have none, how the fuck do you do it? Answer that and stay fashionable. How do you protect yourself from systems explicitly designed to prey upon your lack of control when you have a lack of control? For me, disengagement is about the only solution. How is Spiral, by the way? I'm a fucking Saw nerd and I haven't seen Spiral yet. That's what the ADHD does. I just put on speedruns lately because they're light enough entertainment over the course of several hours that my brain can dip in and out, and they make for great background noise so my brain can just stop screaming for constant overwhelming stimulation like I'm some kind of fucking Slaneshi noise marine or something. It's bad, isn't it? Is Spiral, is it bad? Is Spiral not good? Jigsaw was shit, and I say that as someone who has legitimately loved every single Saw film up to that point because I have literally zero taste whatsoever. Anyway, don't tell me if Spiral is bad yet. Give me a few days to get over Skatebird being kind of shit and breaking my heart.
One of the reasons I brought Laura on is because she just has a far broader scope of the issue than me. I can speak to ADHD, I can speak somewhat to depression, and I can speak to problem gambling, problem shopping, especially with those I have spoken to in the past for previous episodes of the Jimquisition. But there are many other ways in which these economies, these in-game economies, can exploit those with neurodivergency issues.
Indeed. There's definitely situations where the way that microtransactions are presented is often just as damaging as their presence at all in games. A lot of the stuff to do with limited time purchases, it's only available right now, is really, really impactful to people who have fear of missing out that comes from a lot of conditions like autism, obviously ADHD. There are also issues with conditions like bipolar disorder. It's a known thing that the gambling industry preys on advertisements for people that it has worked out have bipolar disorder when they're on manic episodes, and that applies to a lot of conditions. There is some evidence to suggest that advertising for gambling has been used with people who have ADHD to try and target them while they're researching how do I get help with my impulsivity, for example.
Lovely.
Lovely indeed. But I mean, some of these things are going to impact more people than really realise they're going to be impacted long term. I think a big one is old age and deteriorative mental health. A lot of people who right now have absolutely no problem with resisting impulse purchases in video games, as they get older, and particularly if they start getting impacted by conditions that might make it more difficult for them to remember what they have and have not done, that is going to really impact a generation years from now if microtransactions are left unchecked, who might be suckered into making purchases they've already made because they don't remember making them and the game's not going to remind them they've done it.
The game industry loves to portray its targets as fun-loving adults with plenty of disposable cash and no worries whatsoever. Hakuna Matata. Electronic Arts will tell you only a few people ever spend huge amounts on FIFA, willfully oblivious to the fact that sucking vast amounts of cash from a small sample of people doesn't actually make them sound less exploitative, but instead speaks to exactly how targeted and particular these in-game purchases are. The industry calls these high spenders whales, the less than 2% of players who are responsible for pumping so much cash into the industry it can now be measured in the billions. It's easy to portray these dehumanizingly termed whales as rich kids with more money than sense, but there's no evidence for that. Instead, we have plenty of stories of those who drove themselves into debt because they couldn't control their spending in FIFA, especially tricked by the small amounts of purchases that add up over time. There are families whose bank accounts were cleared out because they didn't realize the fun games they bought for their kids could even be capable of extracting cash from them. Let alone to that degree, we have testimony like what I've I've gathered in the past, those with addiction and impulse issues who felt chased out of their favourite games by active financial predators, these are the whales of Legend, not exemplars of disposable income, but victims of a rapacious and irresponsible industry. Microtransactions are an accessibility issue, as much as visuals and audio, as much as motor function and speech. In fact, the disregarding of that speaks to the problems inherent in having an invisible disability. Those with disabilities are not protected by an industry that seeks only to extract cash from them while damning the consequences. Until this is addressed, we have a miserable collection of corporate vultures who do not have the slightest right to credit for accessibility. Apex Legends' ping system is excellent. I'm a huge fan of it and I want to see it in more games. I want more companies to do patent pledges and open up innovations in accessibility. I also agree with Laura's recent video in which she argues that there should be standards across the industry going forward. By the way, check out her new book project, Who Hunts the Whale, which is set to be a satirically pertinent publication. Also, thanks for going over the script, you wanton cutie who. But until the accessibility issue of microtransactions are actually acknowledged, expecting praise for what they've been doing is fucking hypocrisy. You can't speak of the importance of accessibility while making your games outright fucking toxic to the neurodiverse, not without deserving a heaping fucking bucket of criticism for your shamelessly poisonous practices. All of this is to say fuck EA, am I right? You know how I'm right.
The game industry really loves to just pretend that these aren't problems.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big underlying factors here, is they just don't address it. They do not address the elephant in the room. To them, there is no elephant. There is no room. There is only money. And their story, that story they stick to, that it's just a small amount of people who buy them, and they want us to think of those whales, those people, the small amount of people who spend the most amount of money, they want us to think of them all as affluent, wealthy, well-adjusted people to whom this is no big deal because they can easily spend money on their surprise mechanics.
That's exactly it. But it's so easy to forget that it's often, say, someone with autism who really wants to complete collections and gets obsessive about completing them, and suddenly, oh no, I have almost all of the Halloween outfits and they're going away arbitrarily tomorrow, better buy a bunch of loot boxes and try and get it. It's all of these little targeted things that, you know, they prey on everyone, but they prey on disabled people more so.
Yeah, and that word prey speaks to my use of the word predatory, which I use all the time when I talk about these in-game economies, because that's what it is. They have a very particular set of targets, they have honed their hunting techniques, and they go after their prey. And as I've said many times, if you're someone who watches these videos, you're someone who hears these discussions about microtransactions and loot boxes, and you say to yourself, well, it's no big deal, I'm never tempted to buy them, I can just ignore them. Congratulations, you're not the intended victim, you're not the target, you're not the prey.
Or at least you're not today. Who's to say you won't be in the future?
I think that's actually a really good way to end that, actually. Yeah, thank God for me, thank God for you.
Thank God for me?
Thank God for you.
Oh, heck. Thank God for you.
Oh, thank God for you.